All right, we're recording, and we're like 2 weeks late, but we're going to start it now. This is the official review on LiveAnthrax with Wil Avitt of X-Men Apocalypse. Where should we start, Will?
Well, just to recap the plot, Apocalypse is a ancient Egyptian, the first mutant. He gains immortality by switching bodies with other mutants, and he also collects their powers while he does that. And the movie begins with him. Apocalypse is an old man, and he's switching into a younger body that happens to belong to Poe Dameron. And while this is going on, this ceremony is going on, there's a rebellion. The Egyptian people seal him up in a pyramid, and he sleeps until he accidentally gets woken up in the 1980s, and he's pissed, and he's ready to wreak havoc.
Okay. I think by far the opening scene of X-Men Apocalypse is one of the best superhero intros to any movie. I think the intro in the Egyptian scene was phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, it was very well done. It looks beautiful. It sets up the movie perfectly. I mean, I don't have any problems with it. It doesn't leap out at me as being like extraordinary, but I mean, yeah, I certainly don't have any problems with it. It's a very well made sequence.
I think it was a very well made scene, and I think it opened up the story perfectly. Now, I will make the argument that the rest of the movie for Apocalypse from there on out was weak. I think it was a great movie, but I think what they did with Apocalypse was weak.
How so?
Now, obviously he's gained all these powers, he's gained immortality for switching bodies and stuff, and I just feel like there's too much missing. I feel like his four horsemen, or whatever you want to call them, just weren't very influential as a team in protecting him too much, and I feel like his strength wasn't shown overall throughout the movie.
I've read that there was some footage cut from the film, so I don't know, because they kind of made a big deal about this footage being cut from the film. Not as big of a deal as they made on Batman v Superman, where Zack Snyder was basically like, you know, this isn't the real movie. Warner Brothers destroyed this movie. The real movie comes out in July. Like, that's basically what he said right before Batman v Superman was released, because the studio forced him to cut out all that footage.
Right.
So they didn't make that big of a deal about it. But I do wonder if maybe Fox is planning on a rogue cut treatment for X-Men Apocalypse. I don't know what they'll do with it, but I would imagine the Horsemen have had more to do that was cut out, and I think Jubilee probably had a little bit of a bigger part that was cut out.
Yeah. I feel like there should have been a fight scene between the Four Horsemen and the X-Men team before the final fight. I feel like there should have been something to kind of build up to it more.
Yeah, are we live on YouTube, or are we just recording?
This is recording.
Okay. So there will be spoilers in this video, in case anybody's wondering. But yeah, when Apocalypse and his horsemen appear in Cerebro and kidnap Xavier, I agree with you. There definitely should have been a bigger fight there, because they just kind of appeared while Havoc was destroying Cerebro. They just kind of appeared, took Xavier, and then that was it. And then the mansion blew up. So I do feel that there should have been a better fight there. So yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah. And I also feel like that's where Cyclops started to get pushed off to the side.
Yeah, well, that's kind of been a running gag in all these X-Men movies, is that Cyclops gets the shaft.
Oh, yeah.
Even in First Class and Days of Future Past, and both of those, Havoc got the shaft. So Havoc was kind of an extension of the Cyclops shaft. But yeah, I definitely agree. And I'm hoping, because they've already said the next movie will take place in the 90s. Obviously, it will see the new recruits, the new team developing into the team that we saw them in the first X-Men. So I'm hoping that the next 3 movies will actually take place in the 90s, and they'll stop jumping ahead so much and just do a 90s trilogy. And hopefully that trilogy will see Cyclops finally take center stage as the leader, as Cyclops.
Yeah.
But that's just my hope.
Yeah, I think there's many who will agree with you in hoping on that. I've read a lot of discontent on the Cyclops shaft again. And
a lot of people, he's their favorite X-Man.
Yeah.
And if he was my favorite X-Man, I'd be pissed. He's not. Nightcrawler's my favorite X-Man. And luckily, Nightcrawler's only been used twice so far, but he's been used well both times. So.
Oh, yeah. He was used very well in this movie. And one of the characters I think was used very well overall was Quicksilver. And obviously, there's a big debate which Quicksilver was your favorite, the MCU or the Fox universe's Quicksilver. And I think, in a large majority, it's Fox's Quicksilver who's going to be a favorite.
My problem with Quicksilver was that, they when they used him in Days of Future Past, he had that great scene in the kitchen, and, everybody raved about that, and it was so awesome and so wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And then they did the exact same thing in this movie. And I thought that was kind of tired and boring. Even though it was a good sequence, I was like, do we really need to see another slow-mo, Quicksilver rescue sequence set to some period music, And it kind of makes me wonder if the next movie is set in the 90s, is he going to be running in slow-mo to Nirvana?
I was going to say, he's going to be running to Smells Like Teen Spirit or Heart-Shaped Box.
Right. I just thought it was.
I wouldn't mind seeing it. I wouldn't mind seeing it because what other main focus scenes are you going to make with Quicksilver? He's a speedster. I mean, I don't know if
that's true. But I enjoyed what they did with Quicksilver apart from that, though. I enjoyed the way they used him in the battle.
He had great character development.
I mean, I loved seeing him kick Apocalypse's ass at super speed. That was cool.
Yes.
Even though he ultimately didn't win that fight, it was cool to see. And how he took Mystique and ran up the debris to Magneto at super speed. That was cool. I thought they did a lot of cool stuff with Quicksilver in this movie. I just didn't feel like the Sweet Dreams scene was necessary. It was cool, but I don't feel it was necessary. It was a retread, and it was one we didn't need to see.
Right. But it had to be put in there, or how else would they save the team, from the exploding mansion?
Also, I wasn't really thrilled with the way the special effects turned out in that scene, a lot of them.
You were or were not?
I was not. Like, when he was running through the mansion and picking people up, especially when he, turned around Beast and grabbed a couple of other people, a lot of times it felt like, or it looked like, he was just grabbing cardboard cutouts. Like, there was no depth to the people. Like, they just didn't look like real people. They looked like cardboard cutouts that he was just grabbing.
One thing I did notice, and it's like you say, grabbing a cardboard cutout, it seemed that Quicksilver would almost have an additional strength ability, because he's just picking up and moving things, and there's no it's like there's no weight or no, obviously no tired feeling coming to him.
Right. Sometimes he's grabbing full-grown teenagers, one in each arm.
Yeah.
And he's not a big guy, so.
No, and he's a teenager himself, really. So.
Right.
There's kind of that. It makes you wonder. I don't know. I have trouble trying to talk about Quicksilver because I want to keep talking about the Speed Force and whatnot, but I know this is a Fox Marvel movie, not DC Comics.
Wow. Yeah.
but I guess essentially it's kind of the same thing talking about speedsters, whatever universe you're in. Um, but however that goes, one character that I am actually very disappointed with, who's one of my favorite X Men, is Storm. Namesake, but um, I was very disappointed with her character. There was no explanation as to why she was there, why she joined Apocalypse, why she thought this was a good idea, and then she just decided it was bad at the end.
Well, I disagree. Um, I think that uh, they set up that she was that she admired Mystique and that she wanted to be a hero like Mystique. And I think she saw Apocalypse as her chance to be that hero. She bought into what Apocalypse was selling. And so for Storm, joining Apocalypse was the heroic thing to do because the world was corrupted. So I feel like that was her motivation for joining. And then at the end, she sees Apocalypse choking out Mystique, who she knows is the hero, and she's like, wait a minute. And like it all clicks for her, and she's like, this is the bad guy. That's why she joins the X-Men at the end. See, to me, it made perfect sense.
It makes sense when you look at it from that perspective. I just feel like there's no depth to it. And I feel like Storm should be one of the most in-depth characters, obviously because she becomes one of the main leaders.
Well, and there's no depth to really any of the Horseman characters, or even really Apocalypse for that matter. They never explained why he has issues with modern society. You know, they I never got a sense of any real motivation other than he just wants to destroy the world. Even in ancient Egypt, they didn't set up really a motivation for him. You know, what was he trying to do as the ruler of ancient Egypt? What was his plan then? What did he want for the world? And how did the modern world disappoint him? Like, none of that stuff was in the movie, and probably should have been. It was probably pretty important stuff.
Yeah, obviously he showed a direction for world of mutants or superhumans or whatever you want to call them, mutants in X-Men's universe. He's wanting to push towards that world, obviously, but there's not really a motivation for it. Besides, mutants are superb.
And you really get this is the first really, I think, disappointing two-dimensional X-Men villain. Even in X-Men movies that were less good than this one, they had better villains with more clear motivation. Um, like, you know, Magneto's motivation is very apparent in the first X-Men. Stryker's motivation is very apparent in the second X-Men, and it continues over into X-Men Origins Wolverine. Even in that, they do a good job of setting up, you know, where he came from and why he felt the way he did in X-Men 2.
And we see Stryker again here in Apocalypse.
Yeah. X-Men First Class, you get a real sense of why Sebastian Shaw, Kevin Bacon, why he, you know, he feels that mutants are superior. Basically, everything that Magneto would become started right there with Kevin Bacon. And so this is really the first X-Men movie at Days of Future Past. You understand where both Mystique and Trask are both coming from, you know? So really, this is the first disappointing X-Men villain who was very two-dimensional and very much seemed like an MCU villain. Because the MCU villains, none of them have had any real depth or anything.
I feel that if this movie did have some deleted scenes or stuff that will come out on a Rogue Edition or extended cut or director's whatever, whatever extra edition we'll get, maybe on DVD, Blu-ray, I feel like it will make Apocalypse maybe a little less two-dimensional, but I don't feel like it can be fixed completely.
No, and the road cut wasn't there to fix a bad movie. The movie was already good. The road cut was only there to show you the rogue stuff. You know, that's basically all it was. It was there to put in a subplot that really had very little to do with the actual plot, which was why they cut it, and to just say, you know, here's what the movie would have looked like had we left Rogue in, and so yeah, it's a very different thing. I believe, like, if they put out, you know, like the Jubilee cut or whatever they call it of this movie, they're gonna either there are problems that can be fixed with it, or those problems were there from the beginning. But either way, and Batman v Superman is feeling this too. You shouldn't cut important elements from the movie.
No,
and
never.
Even Batman v Superman was still a good movie, you can't see where the holes are. You can't see where that missing footage is supposed to go. And I mean, I think the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman will be brilliant. The movie as it is now is just very good, but it's not brilliant.
Talking about Batman v Superman, throw in Captain America Civil War. Where did X-Men Apocalypse end up on that first weekend or whatever charts, that first week charts? How far off was it in standards compared to Batman v Superman and Captain America?
Pretty comparable its opening weekend, but then it had a 75% drop the next weekend. So it had a big drop off the second weekend from the first weekend, but I'm pretty sure the first weekend it did fairly decent in sales. It was on par with everything else, you know,
right.
The average for a movie. But it did have a drop off.
Do you have any idea what total sales were? I can look that up real quick here.
No, I don't have the numbers in front of me at all.
Let's see. X-Men Apocalypse.
I don't tend to deal so much with box office just because it's not important to what I do. I don't care how much money a movie makes. I care whether it's good or bad. And there are very, very, very good movies that did terrible in the box office. The Shawshank Redemption was a flop. It became a cult classic on VHS, you know.
Right.
But The Shawshank Redemption is one of the most brilliant movies I've ever seen, and it was a flop. So box office really doesn't matter to me. What I care about is a movie good or bad?
X-Men Apocalypse shows 65 million on opening weekend.
That's it?
On domestic opening weekend. And for domestic box office, it shows 136 million. Worldwide, it's almost to 500 million. So, which...
130 million is domestic box office since its release until today.
I believe so.
So it hasn't even made in 2 weeks what Batman v Superman made the first weekend and what Civil War made.
It's showing that X-Men Apocalypse production budget was at $178 million. This is from www.the-numbers.com, and its entire listing of the franchise of X-Men. And obviously this comes into nowhere near as well as some of the others.
You have all the X-Men numbers right there in front of you?
Yes.
What did Wolverine do? X-Men Origins Wolverine.
The Wolverine.
Not the Wolverine, X-Men Origins.
Origins Wolverine, there we go, sorry. May 1st, 2009, production budget of $150 million, so less than X-Men Apocalypse by 28. Opening weekend, $85 million, so $20 million more than X-Men Apocalypse. For domestic opening weekend, domestic box office, it was 179, or just under, a couple $100 under, 180 million.
Okay.
But it has made but it
weekend
made
also
over.
a significant drop off because that's its entire theatrical run, and Apocalypse hasn't been out in the theaters that long yet. So.
Worldwide, Apocalypse has made more than X-Men Origins Wolverine. It's made, it looks like, $104 million more.
Well, that's good. I mean, it is a better movie than Wolverine. So.
And they do have Gambit listed on here, but 0 on all categories. So
yeah, Gambit.
It says December 31st,
Gambit
2016.
Gambit is likely not happening.
Likely not happening.
Right.
Um,
In fact, from what I've read, from what I've been reading, Channing Tatum is possibly up for the role of Shazam, so he might not even be playing Gambit or associated.
Yes, I seen that. Channing Tatum versus Dwayne Johnson. So, I found it funny that they haven't cast Shazam yet, but they've casted Black Adam. So,
well, I mean, if you read the Captain Marvel comics, the Shazam comics, Black Adam looks identical to The Rock. I mean,
yes,
The Rock
he does.
is the spitting image of Black Adam. That's one of those castings where you're like, you know, like Samuel L. Jackson as Nick Fury. It's like there's nobody else that can do this. We're not even going to try.
No,
If we don't get The Rock to play Black Adam, we're not making this movie. That's kind of how that should have played out, you know?
Yeah, I understand that.
But The Rock is a huge comic book fan, so it doesn't surprise me that he's doing. Which most professional wrestlers are. I think that's why they get into doing what they do.
The same thing happened with Professor X. The older Professor X. I mean, can't think of the actor's name off the top of my head. You would know.
Patrick Stewart.
Yes, he looks exactly like Professor X. I mean, there's no other person.
When I was in high school in the late 90s and they were first talking about X-Men being in development, there was never anyone ever suggested for that role other than Patrick Stewart. The only other name I've heard associated with that role is Captain Picard, who was also played by Patrick Stewart. So
right. So yeah, that's just kind of how it happens. While we're taking a quick look at numbers, worldwide, X-Men Apocalypse obviously $478 million. Deadpool, Days of Future Past are the only other two to surpass it in the X-Men franchise. The Wolverine was 416,000, and
I wonder if
Last Stand was just short of 460, and X2 was 400. Other than that, the rest of them are in the 200 and 300 million.
Yeah, but like I said, I wonder if those numbers are adjusted for inflation.
Right, and that's just something it's hard to tell.
Money was worth a lot different amount 16 years ago than it is now.
Yeah, that's true. For the X-Men franchise, though, there is a total production budget of $1,271,000,000. And it shows worldwide box office at $4,313,000,000.
For the entire
400,000, yeah. So they've made roughly 4 times what they've spent.
Right, and they're making money. Fox is going to continue making these movies.
Yeah. And rightfully they should. I know a lot of people have problem with Fox and how they've made movies, but overall, in an overall broad view, they're not doing anything wrong with X-Men.
No.
They're doing great.
I agree. And I don't think that the X-Men belong in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for that, but I don't care.
There's too big of a contrast for how each has taken. In the X-Men world, mutants are bad. We got to, get rid of them. In this Marvel universe, we need to, bring them in. We need to fight by their side. We need to have them under our control.
Yeah. The mainstream Marvel superheroes are mostly respected, and all mutants are, distrusted and hated and feared. And I find it hard to believe that in an actual society, in an actual world, why would people not be afraid of you just because you were bombarded by cosmic rays or blew up in a gamma bomb instead of, that you were born that way? Like, it
Right.
just doesn't make any sense to me. Oh, you're bitten by a radioactive spider. We love you. You were born, with the exact same superpowers, and we hate you because you were born. It just doesn't make sense.
No.
Either you would hate everyone with superpowers or you would respect everyone with superpowers.
Now,
And how they got that it should be irrelevant.
the
So I
only
don't
sad
that
part.
big extreme aspect. What?
The only sad part that's going to come from this is we're never going to see like the special renditions of like the Fantastic Four with Wolverine and Spider-Man. You know, we're never going to see those special team ups like some of those. But
Yeah, but we were likely never to see that anyway.
that's true.
Um,
We can still hope for some animated movies with it, I guess.
you could conceivably still have Wolverine in the Fantastic Four movie, because Fantastic Four and X-Men are both Fox. But Fox needs to just give up on the Fantastic Four. The Fantastic Four are just they're never going to make a movie that people enjoy. I mean, I really liked the first two Fantastic.
To be honest, I enjoyed the first Fantastic Four, and they probably should have left it at that.
I liked them both. I liked both of them. I felt that they captured the spirit of the comics quite well. I felt that they were competent movies.
Silver Surfer was great, in my opinion.
The Fantastic Four are just a lame comic book to begin with. Okay, and you're not going to do anything to make that good except go completely away from the comic, and that's going to piss people off too. So no matter what you do, you're going to piss people off with the Fantastic.
If you're taking my opinion, the only character who had any sort of future from Fantastic Four was Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. I mean, otherwise you just have another, Elastic Man, Plastic Man, whatever you want to call him. That's DC names. But you just got another stretchy guy. You have another person who can be invisible, and you have a big rock. I mean, I feel like the Human Torch was the only thing that would go anywhere from that series.
Well, and I thought what they did with the new Fantastic Four was interesting. I thought that doing it as more of a sci-fi horror movie, like Alien style, I thought that was an interesting route to take. But in the end, the movie just wasn't good.
No.
I gotten on board with the concept had the film been good, but it just wasn't a good movie.
Yeah.
And Josh blames Fox, and maybe it was, studio interference, but either way, it just was not a good movie.
Now, we're kind of detouring from X-Men, but while we're talking about it, we might as well. This is LiveAnthrax. We're just going to come with what goes. And Fantastic Four has had many renditions. So has Spider-Man. How are you feeling about Spider-Man Homecoming coming up here in the next couple years?
I'm not excited for it.
Not excited.
I like Tom Holland in Civil War. I thought he made a good Spider-Man, but I just get the feeling that Homecoming is going to turn out to be the Disney Channel version of Spider-Man. Maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe I'll be proven wrong, and I'll freely admit it if I am. But I just feel like it's going to be Spider-Man in High School Musical, and I don't want to see that. I don't care.
My only fear, I think it will probably be okay. I don't know if anybody will beat out the Tobey Maguire movies for me. But we'll see how Tom Holland and Disney Marvel really pick up on that, which it'll be interesting. But my fear is that Disney is going to run some of these stories into the ground because they can't seem to keep a dark aspect of like a character dying or moving on to the next rendition of a comic, because they keep, somebody dies. How many people have we had die in the Marvel Universe and stay dead? I mean, Quicksilver.
Yeah.
That's
pretty
it.
much it.
I mean, Pepper Potts came back to life. Hello. She's not even superhuman. So
Now we will see probably at least one major character die in Infinity War. I would almost guarantee it.
and I think it will be Captain America.
It might be. It could be Iron Man. It could be Thor. But it will be one of those three.
Um, I was reading today that in Thor Ragnarok, we may possibly see the Bruce Banner Hulk um, personality clash. Where the idea finally comes for a split, maybe, or maybe it just comes to a serious aspect. This is all just fan speculation online, but the possibility I think is strong.
That'll be interesting. I mean, I'll definitely like to see where they go with having Hulk and Thor Ragnarok.
Yeah. Um, and I would love to see what they do with Bucky as Captain America. So we just have to see.
To go that route, which I think they should, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they will.
Yeah, it's hard to guess what they will do.
Right.
Back on the X-Men train, your favorite character in the movie?
Well, my favorite X-Man is Nightcrawler, and I really enjoyed what they did with him in this movie. So, yeah, I'll probably say Nightcrawler.
Who do you think was best portrayed, or had the best development, or overall would be the main hit from Apocalypse?
Well, I don't think a lot of people really had all that much development. I guess maybe Magneto. Magneto goes from another tragedy to finally at the end possibly not being a villain anymore. We'll have to see how that plays out. But yeah, I'd have to say probably either that or Xavier because, well, this entire trilogy has really been focused on those two characters. And it's really been about them and their relationship. And I think they both had a great deal of development in this. I think Magneto finally saw that maybe war is not the best way to go. And Xavier also saw at the end, even if it was somewhat begrudgingly, that if you want peace, you have to be prepared for war. Because he did not want to have any more X-Men at his school. He did not want there to be soldiers at his school. But Mystique convinced him that it was going to be necessary. And so we see them, training the next group of, the second class, as you will. So I think Magneto and Professor Xavier probably had the most character development. Nobody else really had any.
No, there really wasn't anything else coming out of that. So I think Magneto was probably the best maybe growth of character, maybe not so much development, but or continuation of a character. And obviously, I just think his story is phenomenal, and they've done an amazing job putting it together. Now, where are we pushing with? Because obviously, Professor X and Magneto have more conflict coming at each other in the future. How do we push this idea with maybe Magneto not being evil, but still being against Professor X?
Well, Magneto has never really been evil per se. Magneto has always just sought basically the same thing that Xavier seeks. He just goes about it a different way. Xavier is like, no, humans and mutants have to learn how to live together in harmony. And Magneto's like, yeah, that's great. If they want to live with us and leave us alone, that's great. Otherwise, I will destroy them.
Right.
So it's not really like Magneto's not out to take over the world, but he will if that's what it takes to keep mutants safe. And that's why Magneto and Xavier team up as often as they do, both in the comics and in the movies, because there are a lot of times when they have the same goal. Yeah. And then there are other times when they're at odds with each other.
And inevitably they have the same goal. It's just that they both want mutants safe, but Charles Xavier wants it as a peaceful co-harmony with humans, and Magneto is willing to do it without humans.
Right. Right.
And
so yeah, I think Magneto, where he's at right now, is the same. Well, I guess he's at the same place at the end of the movie that he was at the beginning. If they leave me alone, I'll leave them alone. So I guess maybe he didn't have all that much development throughout the movie itself, unless you count that he did like a complete turnaround, because he went from, if they leave me alone, I'll leave them alone, to they didn't leave me alone, so now I will destroy them, back to, well, if they leave me alone, I'll leave them alone. So we'll see. Obviously, if Magneto comes back, which we may see no Magneto for another couple of movies. Who knows? I guess it depends on Michael Fassbender whether he wants to keep doing them or not. But
I really hope he does.
But I think we'll see Magneto in a very similar place next time that he's at this time, which is basically trying to be left alone until something happens and he can't be left alone anymore.
Right. So we know that we're moving into the 90s. And you're hoping that the next 3 movies stay there, and I kind of hope the same, because I don't want to see another huge jump in X-Men, and surely don't want to see another timeline change, because that just will confuse too much with some aspects. Where do you think we're going to go with this second class, this 1990s push?
I'm hoping they actually use some big 90s villains. Some villains that were popular in the 90s. I would love to see Onslaught. I think they're setting up for Mr. Sinister to be in the next one with the post-credits sequence. Although Mr. Sinister may actually have a lot to do with Wolverine 3. That may be what they were setting up. I don't know. But I'd like to see Sinister. I'd like to see Onslaught. Apocalypse was big in the 90s, and they just used him, so it won't be that, but...
Right.
They're doing the Legion television show. Maybe they can use Legion. Maybe they'll bring him into a movie. I don't know when the series is going to take place, but... I don't know. I would like to see them use the decade to actually introduce characters and use characters that were big in the 90s. Make these movies feel like they were actually made in the 90s and not just set in the 90s. That's what I'd like to see.
That's a fair point, to kind of get that idea. Obviously, we're going to have Deadpool 2 in this next phase from Fox, and Cable. So let's talk a little bit about that. How do you still have the same feelings about Deadpool 2 not being near as successful?
I don't think it will be as successful, just because it will have lost its novelty. I think that's really the novelty factor was what really made Deadpool so successful, because it's not that great of a movie. It's a great movie. It's a great movie, but it's not that special of a movie. There's nothing extraordinary about it other than that it exists. It really is just a very standard superhero movie, a very well done one, but a very standard superhero movie with standard superhero plots and tropes. And I think the novelty will have worn off, but maybe I'll be wrong. Maybe the Deadpool fan base will continue to surprise me.
And I wouldn't be necessarily surprised if it happens to stick. and I hope it does, in some major ways, and hope some it doesn't. Um, it's getting old seeing some young kids walk around with a T-shirt that says like chimichangas on it, and it's red and black. They have no idea, really. I, the, so many that haven't picked up a comic or have really no idea about the character just from the movie. And I know that you know the same type of fate that we have to face, but it's
Yeah, but that's what kids latch on to though. Um, I mean, I was a big Superman fan before I'd ever picked up a comic because when I was growing up, Christopher Reeve's Superman movies were everywhere.
yeah.
Well, you're a big Batman fan because of when you grew up, Batman was everywhere.
Batman
Uh,
was everywhere, absolutely
and
everywhere. Animated series, comics,
yeah,
um, Justice League. You know,
80s, odds are Superman was your first superhero. If you grew up in the 90s, odds are it was Batman. If you're growing up now, for whatever reason, it seems to be Deadpool. 10 years ago, it was Spider-Man. Um,
well, here's a good question. Do you think we're going to see a resurgence of kids with their favorite superheroes being the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?
we might.
Because obviously TMNT 2 is coming out here this year, um,
It's already out.
with Stephen Amell. So
Yeah, it came out last week.
came out. Yeah, it's out. It's out.
Yeah.
Um, which neither of us have seen it yet. So we'll see where that actually develops and see how that goes. But talking about Deadpool, Deadpool's by far the most successful X-Men movie. Production budget was 58 million, and worldwide it shows 777 million dollars. So whatever percentage of increase that is.
Right.
And to think it wasn't even going to be a movie until Ryan Reynolds leaked um,
The test footage.
the test footage. Yeah,
Yeah, which he denies that he did it, but he's also very coy about it.
yeah,
He's like, well, it was either me or three other people. It was one of us, but we don't know which one it was.
right.
And everybody else is like, it wasn't me. I bet it was Ryan. And Ryan's like, I don't know who it was.
And if there was any character that Ryan Reynolds was just supposed to play, it was Deadpool.
Well, and apparently, it's very common for actors to steal things from the set, and for actors who have played superheroes to steal their costumes. Ben Affleck apparently asked for his, and they told him it would cost him $100,000, so he said no thanks. Yeah. Um, Dean Cain, yeah. Dean Cain stole his, and he freely admitted that he stole his Superman costume. Ryan Reynolds didn't even steal it. He just took it home. He literally walked off the set with it and said, I'm taking it home. Stop me. I dare you. I don't know. I didn't read that. Yeah, apparently some costumer or somebody asked him, Mr. Reynolds, don't you want to take the costume off? He said, nope, not taking it off. Come take it. And he just went to his car and went home, which is cool as hell. Right. Yeah. Well, and here's the thing, okay? That to me is the production being greedy because Ben Affleck is going to make you a lot of money in this movie. He's going to make you a lot of money in future DC movies as Batman. And you're only sitting there saying, well, I paid you $10 million to be in this movie. If you want a suit, you're going to have to pay for it. No, that's dumb. Just give the man a suit. Say, we appreciate you being in charge of this movie. Here you go. Hang on a second. What? Oh, do you need me with you? Okay.
So,
I think we have to take off.
okay, that's fine. We can start
I'm
to
being,
wrap up
being
here,
told,
and
yeah, I'm being told we have stuff to do. So,
well,
uh, my thoughts though.
yes,
I thought X-Men Apocalypse was a good movie. It's not a great movie by any stretch of the imagination. There are much better X-Men movies, but it's enjoyable and it's definitely worth watching again.
I would agree, and I think it was a good final piece to this phase, and I'm definitely looking forward to the next piece and wherever
I
that's going to go.
I definitely agree with that. So,
So, alrighty, Will, thank you for joining Live Anthrax for another review, and hopefully we'll be pushing out some more movies on reviews this year.
all right, sounds good.